Oh, thank you for having me.
Everybody's very excited to hear from
Awesome.
you, and especially the day before the election, Jamie. This is incredibly generous of you. What is your day like today? I'm just curious.
Well, I started off, it's a lot of emotion, Katie. I started off with my last all staff meeting of the morning. And I was just like a waterfall of tears.
Really?
Yeah, it's just so emotional. I've been doing this now. The idea first came up about 2 years ago. and and we were able to put together such an amazing staff of young talent, and they put their all into this thing, and I've told them they've already made history. I mean, just on the fundraising front, I mean, we've raised more than any Senate candidate in the history of this country, right? Um,
Awesome. I mean, and a lot of it came in, Jamie, from out of state. And I was curious why you think your candidacy really captured the imagination of so many people outside of South Carolina.
well, it's about hope. I mean, right now, Katie, if you think about it, people are so tired. The anxiety level in lives is just at an all-time high. And folks are just looking for a reprieve. They're looking for something to, some light in the darkness that we have right now. And I've been focused like a laser on just talking about hope, how things can get better for us, how we can fight to do better, how we can bring our communities together. We're so divided in so many ways, Democrats versus Republicans, black folks versus white folks. I mean, just like in all of these different ways, and it doesn't have to be that way. And so that's what I've been trying to focus on, is like just bringing together our communities so that we could focus on doing better for all of us and not just a select group.
Yeah, I had a long conversation with David Brooks yesterday, who is the columnist for the New York
Yeah.
Times. Talked about tribalism really having its roots in loneliness and isolation. And people have now taken on political identities as if they are their ethnicity. And so anything that challenges that, they are so wrapped up in political identity. It's very, it makes it really challenging to talk to each other and to have empathy for each other. Anyway, I just thought it was interesting. I'm going to be posting that interview tomorrow. But let me ask you a little bit about, so for people who, a lot of people are saying they're in line voting for you, but you were raised by your grandparents, right, Jamie? You have
Yeah. So
quite.
I was born to a teen mom. My mom was 16 when she had me, and so she was a kid herself. And so my grandparents really helped raise me. And they didn't have much, Katie. My grandmother had an eighth-grade education. She quit school to go pick cotton, and then she worked in textile plants and did domestic work. And then my grandfather quit school in fourth grade, and he worked at a dairy, and then he did construction most of his life. And so we didn't have a whole lot of money. They didn't have a whole lot of education, but they just taught me the value of working hard, because they were two of the hardest working people I've ever met in my life. And
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 you excelled, Jamie. I mean, you went on to Yale and then to Georgetown Law School, right?
yes, yep,
That's where my late husband went, to Georgetown Law School. And
yeah,
I mean, you obviously had to be really excel academically. How did they inspire you to work so hard in school to get, so you could actually go to Yale?
yeah. It's really interesting. So my grandma would often say, she was like, we don't know what you're doing, Jamie, but it seems like you're trying to do something good, and so you let us know what you need to do. And so if I needed to go to the library, they took me to the library. If I wanted to stay afterwards for some type of activity, they made sure I had a ride back home in order to do that. And they encouraged me because they understood, again, because they didn't have much education, they knew that the gateway to the American dream was education. And so they tried to do everything that they possibly could in order to invest in that education for me, and it's paid off. I mean, and I'm so thankful for the sacrifices that they made for me, and that's what we all do as parents, right? That's what we all do as grandparents, is make sacrifices for our kids so that they can have a better life. And And that's what I want to do for the folks here in South Carolina. I want to make sure that every little kid in the state get an opportunity to live their American dream. And I've lived mine, and I believe they should be able to live theirs as well.
How is the race looking right now? Obviously, tomorrow's election day. People are still voting, and I know I want to talk to you about some of the voter suppression things
Yep.
that are going on in South Carolina. But I mean, who knows if we can trust polls this year, Jamie? Supposedly they are more accurate because they have made adjustments from the mistakes of 2016, particularly with the state polls. But how is it looking right now for you?
It is it is neck and neck, Katie, neck and neck. And there was a poll, another Morning Consult poll that came out today that had me down 2. It was in the margin of error, but like last week I was up 2, right? Or it's tied, and all of them are within the margin of error. And so it's about turnout. It's about who can get their folks turnout. And I believe in the end of the day, the energy is on our side. And we see that even in the early voting results. So our model for, my win model for how I was going to win this race was the thought that we'd have 800,000 people vote early. We've had 1.2 million people vote early, and that does not count the folks who are voting today. And here in South Carolina, African Americans make up about 26% of the electorate.
Mm-hmm.
They've made up 30% of the early vote in South Carolina.
Wow.
So we are outpacing Obama level turnout here, and we built a coalition. So it's not just going to be black voters, but white voters and everybody else. We've even getting slivers of Republican vote because folks are fed up. They're tired of having a senator that doesn't fight for them or work for them. Is just only looking for his own political power. And,
well, I'm so fascinated by Senator Lindsey Graham's evolution, if you want to call it that, or metamorphosis. He and Joe Lieberman and John McCain were the three amigos. He was John McCain's BFF. And you would think that he would be upset when the president says he doesn't like people who are captured and says John McCain isn't a war hero, because, I mean, they were tighter than tight. How do you explain this evolution from Lindsey Graham, also highly critical of Donald Trump, to basically, being his number one cheerleader and supporter?
Yeah. I often joke that it's like watching a live version of an invasion of the body snatchers. Like, who took Lindsey Graham? Did some alien come down and take the Lindsey Graham we all used to respect? I think part of it is, and Steve Schmidt said this in one of the articles that came on, that Lindsey latches himself on to strong personalities. He did that with John McCain, and when John McCain stepped off of the stage, it's Donald Trump. And it's partly because Lindsey is attracted to political relevancy and political power. I mean, that is the constant that you see with Lindsey Graham. He likes to be in the middle of it. So, I talk often with some of the Obama administration folks, and they said, when President Obama was in the White House, Lindsey was always over the White House. Always. He was the guy, our go-to Republican, to try to, work to get stuff done. And it's not about the politics of it all. It's about the power. Like, Lindsey just wants to be in the mix. And right now, in order to be in the mix with this administration, he needed to do all of the things, golfing with the president all the time and rubber stamping everything that the president said. But the problem is, that's all great if South Carolina's benefiting from that, but it's not.
Why do you say that, Jamie? Why is it not benefiting from his sort of position of power in South Carolina, in Washington? And is that the reason you think a lot of people are still supporting him, because the perceived power and proximity to the president?
Well, some people do think, Lindsey has seniority and therefore, and Lindsey has the president's ear. But Katie, there are things here that aren't right. For instance, South Carolina is, in terms of PPP dollars, coronavirus is really, it's devastated the entire country, but it's particularly had a huge impact here in South Carolina. We've had 750,000 of our folks file for unemployment. 400,000 have lost their health care as a result. Thousands of businesses have shuttered. Lindsey Graham said over his dead body, will we allow an extension of the unemployment benefit? So in the midst of, the hardest time for families, this guy is fighting against them and not fighting for them to get additional benefit dollars here. South Carolina is also ranked 50th in terms of PPP dollars per worker in the state of South Carolina. So if you were the best friend of the president, heck, you would think that you could do better than 50th in terms of getting more dollars into South Carolina to keep our small businesses open. He's taken money. He's allowed the administration to take money from some of our military bases to use to build the wall. $11 million left from a military base in Beaufort County. Lindsey promised that, and the money still has not come back yet. So, time and time again, South Carolina is secondary to Lindsey Graham, buttering up the administration.
Let me ask you a question, though. Why is he enjoying so much support still in South Carolina? It's a traditionally red state, I guess.
Well, Katie, he can't be enjoying too much support because we're neck and neck in this race. He beat his last opponent by 14 points. We're less than 2 points, plus or minus, depending on the poll in this election. So, Lindsey's in the fight of his life right now. And I believe tomorrow, when the end result is done, that he's going to lose his seat. And so, there's a hardcore, and you're right. The hardcore is that there are more Republicans in South Carolina than there are Democrats. But right now, this is a neck and neck race, even though Donald Trump is in the last poll, 51%. And even Trump has lost some support in South Carolina. He won this state with 55% of the vote. The last poll showed him up by 7 or 8 points over Joe Biden. So this is a much more, people are waking up. It's just not about, belonging to one party. It's about, that old adage from Tip O'Neill, all politics are local. And if you forget that, then you get races like this.
You've said that the Graham campaign has tried to whittle away support from you through scare tactics, and it has attempted to demonize you. How is the Graham campaign painting you, Jaime, and how would you like to dispel anything that's out there?
Yeah, one of the things, Katie, is, they've done all kinds of things. And one, they say, well, Jaime's for defunding the police. I've been crystal clear. I'm not for defunding the police. I've had several of my family members actually serve in the police. My grandpa, Ron, served in the Detroit Police Department for over 30 years. And so I support police. I believe that they have an important role and function in our community, but I also believe that we need to bring some more accountability. Some of the things that we have seen over the past few months and years are not what we need in our police forces. We got to root out some of these bad apples. We also are putting too much on our police officers to do. We're asking them to be not only law enforcement officers, but counselors and domestic violence, counselors and everything else. And I think we need to figure out how do we do policing in the 21st century and do it in such a manner where the police officers themselves don't have to wear 5 million different hats, but there are other folks that can be there to complement the work that they're doing. And so, he said, well, Jaime's a socialist. I don't know how I can become a socialist. And, I've worked in the past for Boeing and Michelin and all of these other folks. It's the most ridiculous things, Katie. Or, Jaime Harrison is going to do Nancy Pelosi's bidding or whatever. In my family, we were always taught to say nice things about people who do nice things for you. When I was a young staffer on Capitol Hill and people didn't want to give me a chance, Pelosi gave Clyburn her blessing to allow me to become the executive director of the House Democratic Caucus. to be the first African American and youngest person to run the whip operation on the floor of the House of Representatives. And so, you know, the way that I teach my sons are, you always say nice things about people who've done nice things for you. You always do nice things to folks. You don't demonize people, even if you don't always agree with them. And it's not to say that I agree with Nancy Pelosi on everything, but I respect her. I respect how she has come up in politics. And so it's just, you know, it's just sad to see our senator, who I used to have so much respect for.
Yeah, it must be frustrating for you. And,
yeah,
you know, I think everything has been boiled down to, you know, black and white issues. Like, you're either for the police or for Black Lives Matter. And this idea that you can be for support good police officers, support police reform, and support Black Lives Matter.
Exactly right. Exactly. It's about bringing communities together, Katie. That's the thing. We are too divided. We need to come together. And Senator Graham has led you know, he hasn't even talked about his record of 25 years. That's the part. And he had this one ad up, well, his super PAC, which basically said, you know, I'm Chinese, you know, almost treasonous to the fact, because one of the companies that used to work, that was a client of my firm, did something in China. And so, of course, it means then Jaime is a Chinese sympathizer. And it's the most ridiculous things that I've ever seen. And it shows that this guy's just out of touch. And then the latest things that he's saying, you know, he said at one forum that, you know, if you're an African American in South Carolina, you can go anywhere you want as long as you're conservative. I said, who needs Lindsey Graham's permission to go anywhere? This is America. This is not 1950s America. It's 2020. And he said the other day about women that, you know, if you're a woman and you're pro-life, and there's a place for you in America if you're pro-life and you believe in traditional family structures. Again, it seems like he's some relic from the 1950s. There's some leftover. In America, it doesn't matter who you are, what you believe, what you do. You should be able to live your life the way that you want to. And so that's what I'm fighting for. I don't know what he's fighting for, but that's what I'm fighting for.
We reached out to Lindsey Graham and we haven't gotten a response, because I thought it would be interesting for me to have a conversation with him as well, because I've covered him through the years. Let me ask you about Tim Scott. If you win, Jaime, you and Tim Scott there'll be the first state in the country to have 2 Black senators serving simultaneously. I'm curious about your relationship. I've interviewed Tim Scott before. I thought he seemed like a great guy. And I'm curious about your relationship with Tim Scott. Have you gotten to know him through the years, just through South Carolina?
Yeah. You know, Tim's a good guy. He and I look at the world differently. We have definitely, we're the opposite sides of the coins in terms of politics. But he's a really good guy, and I believe that he's trying to do what he believes is best for South Carolina. Again, I have a different perspective, and I think he and I will be able to work well together. I really do, and you know. But this is such a historic thing, and again, it's about how we as a state can turn the page, close the book on the old South, and write a brand new book called the New South. And
I've heard that, and what does that look like to you, Jaime? The New South.
It is a place where all of our diversity is cherished. It's where all of our voices can be heard and appreciated. It's a, you know, I believe the brighter days of South Carolina are ahead of her, not behind her. And so, you know, that means also making sure that we address some of these long-term historical disparities, that we have seen in our state, particularly in rural communities. You know, we have 38% of our rural communities, Katie, that don't have broadband. 38% of them. You know, I often say, how do we expect our kids to compete with the rest of the world when they can't even connect with the rest of the world?
That's been such a problem all over the country, Jaime, during the pandemic, with so many rural and poor communities, and kids have had to go into parking lots to do their homework.
Yes.
Terrible.
It's terrible. And part of it is a lack of vision. And you see it a lot, particularly in some of these southern states. It is, let's just stick with the status quo, but that's not who we are as a nation. America has always been on the cutting edge of innovation. And it seems like what we have done is we've had a generation of leaders who are just content with where things are. And we should never be content with where things are. We should be pushing the envelope on technology, on innovation. And I see it in so many aspects of our society in terms of our cars, the transportation and the trains that we have here. You go over to Europe and you go to Asia and you look at the innovative things that they're doing, the new technologies that they're investing in, and you come back here and you're like, wait, hold a minute. Isn't America always supposed to be pushing the edge on everything that we enjoy? Now we've done because we were always on the edge of innovation. Even doing this now, these Zoom or Instagram, it's because of the investment we always made in pushing the envelope. But we have this group of leaders now, and I think Lindsey Graham's one of them, that is just content. And I'm not content. I think we can do better. I know we can do better. And we need to start preparing our kids for the next generation, the next generation of leaders in this country. And that means investing more in technology, investing more in new energy sources, investing more in so many other things, making sure that our infrastructure is taken care of. But right now, that's not the case here. We have some of the worst roads here in South Carolina. The pipes we got 40 communities right now with lead levels higher than the federal standards. And you don't hear Lindsey Graham talking about this. You don't hear him addressing these things. Our hospitals are closing. Here in South Carolina, Katie, just 2 years ago, 14 of our 46 counties had no OBGYNs. Think about that. 14 counties, entire counties, where there's not one OBGYN. We are in America. This is not some third world country just breaking into, trying to figure out where we are. But this is the state of what you can find in South Carolina, what you can find in parts of Georgia, in Mississippi, in Alabama. And it's all because we have these leaders that are caught in a 1960s mentality instead of thinking about how we improve lives for the folks today.
It's interesting. Georgia is very competitive right now, and it's getting a lot of attention. Maybe Stacey Abrams' experience and her efforts to get out the vote. But do you think that Georgia could possibly go blue?
I think so. And I think South Carolina is not far behind. What you're seeing right now are some massive demographic changes that are taking place in the South. So first of all, you're seeing reverse migration. African Americans whose forefathers and foremothers went, in the early 1910s and the 20s, right, went to the industrial Midwest and Northeast, are now coming back home. They're coming back to the South, and they're settling in places like Atlanta and Charlotte, in Charleston, in Greenville, South Carolina. You're also seeing retirees from the Northeast that are coming down for a warmer way of life, and they're bringing a much more moderate politics. And you're also seeing a fast-growing Latino population. And so all of those things are all culminating in changing the face of the South and changing the politics of the South. And so the trendsetter was Virginia, and then Virginia pushed, and then North Carolina's trending.
My home state.
Yes. And so now you're seeing it sort of make its way down the East Coast, and I think you'll see Alabama and Mississippi and Louisiana also transform over the course of the next years as well. So it's remarkable to watch.
Before we go, and Jaime, you've been so generous with your time, I want to ask you about voter suppression. And I know there's that Supreme Court ruling, and maybe you could help me understand it, that said in South Carolina, people sending in mail-in ballots have to have an eyewitness sign that ballot.
Yes.
Tell me about that and the impact you feel like it might have on voting in South Carolina.
Well, this is some of the asinine stuff that I just don't understand, Katie, about our politics. We say that we are the greatest democracy on the planet, and I believe that. But yet we have folks, and we send our sons and daughters overseas to fight for democracy, for right for votes, for folks to vote in other countries. But we have folks in this country who find every way possible to keep people from the ballot box here in America. And that to me is just absolutely criminal. I believe that the greatest right we have as American citizens is our right to vote. And that should be unencumbered. We should not have folks trying to take that away from folks. And so here in South Carolina, we're in the midst of a pandemic where people don't want to interact with other folks because it could endanger their lives. And so when you pass a bill that says, okay, you can vote from home, you can send your ballot in the mail because we don't want to have to interact with other folks. But then you're going to sue to go up to the Supreme Court and say, well, by the way, yeah, you can vote from home, but you need to find somebody to witness it as well. So interact with them and witness that. And so they changed whether or not they needed a witness or not having a witness so often that people are just legitimately confused. They don't know. And so right now there are 2,000 ballots here in South Carolina, at least 2,000 ballots as of a day or two ago, where they're possibly going to throw those ballots out, not give folks an opportunity to cure their ballots because they don't have a witness signature on. And we're doing that here in South Carolina. And Lindsey Graham's complicit with it because he supported the Republican effort in order to appeal this. And to me, that's just not right. It is just not right. It's anti-American. But we're going to do everything that we can on this campaign. We're working with Stacey Abrams' group. We're working with a number of lawyers to make sure that every person that is eligible to vote gets an opportunity to do so and to have their vote counted.
And so are you working with the people, and are you trying to clear up that confusion so these votes, these ballots can get in and can be counted? By the way, South Carolina election day, or what is the ruling there? Everyone has all these different rules. How long will absentee or mail-in ballots be allowed to be counted, Jaime?
Well, if your ballot is not in by, I believe it's 5 o'clock or 7 o'clock tomorrow, then it won't be counted. And so it's important. And I tell folks, if you have a physical ballot, take it into the Election Commission. Do not put it in the mail because it will not get counted. So take it into your local election commission, or you go to your precinct tomorrow and take that ballot with you physically there and drop it off. Make sure that it's signed, that you sign the oath and you also get a witness signature as well to make sure your ballot is counted. So important to do so.
What have you learned from running this campaign? And whatever happens, Jaime, do you think you'll stay involved in politics if you don't win? Or, I don't want to jinx anything, but yeah. I'm just curious. Has it given you more faith in the system, in politics? Are you disillusioned? How are you feeling after this extraordinary experience?
Katie, what gives me so much hope are all of the messages that I'm getting on Facebook and Twitter from parents whose young kids have seen our ads, and they're now going around saying, I'm Jaime Harrison and I approve this message. Our bus went through Rock Hill, South Carolina, which is on the border between on the border of North Carolina. And our bus went through, and the newspaper said that there were these two kids that were in the yard. And they started yelling, Jaime Harrison's here! Jaime Harrison's here! And they ran into the house to get their parents so their parents could come, and because they thought I was on the bus as well. It just gives me so much hope that our campaign has inspired a whole new generation of young people. And it makes me feel so good, Katie, because I started politics because in 1988, I saw Jesse Jackson, a son of South Carolina from Greenville, South Carolina, on the convention floor speaking at the Democratic convention. And he talked about his experiences growing up in South Carolina, and he talked about hope and how young people could be a part of making this a better place to live. And that inspired me. And to think that our campaign has inspired maybe the next president of the United States, the next governor of South Carolina, and the next congresswoman, congressman from South Carolina, makes me feel as though we have already won this race. Regardless of what the outcome is on Tuesday, we've already won. And that's what I sought off to do, to dispel some of the myths about Black folks running statewide. people had missed that Black people couldn't raise money statewide. You couldn't do this and that. Well, we have already popped those bubbles to say, we have already won. And so I'm going to continue to push. I'm going to stay involved because I know that it's a gateway of improving the lives of people. And so, I'm just overjoyed, and I'm proud of the race that we've won. We have run, and I'm proud of the people that we've impacted.
Well, people are asking how they can help, and I'm assuming they can donate to your campaign still.
Yeah, still donate. Go to JaimeHarrison.com, make a contribution. We're going to put it right back into phone banking for tomorrow. Or they can, if they want a phone bank, go to JaimeHarrison.com, sign up to volunteer, and we would love to have you.
Well, Jaime, thanks so much for talking with us and for letting my followers be a part of this conversation. And we're going to have this conversation. I have a newsletter, Jaime. I'm trying to do a media company where I'm reaching people where they are.
Yeah.
To your point, but we have a newsletter called Wake Up Call every morning. And Jaime, if you don't get it, please sign up by going
I will.
Couric.com. And thanks so much for talking with us, Jaime. And we greatly appreciate it. It's so nice to see elected officials being role models for kids instead of role models of how not to act. So yes. Thank you for throwing your hat in the ring. I know it's a ton of work, and you've had to sacrifice a lot to be in this campaign. So thanks for everything. And it's been a real pleasure talking to you.
Thank you, Katie. You're an inspiration for so many. I enjoyed watching you over the years. So thank you so much for what you've done.
Thanks, Jaime. Okay. Thanks for joining.
Okay. Take care. Bye.
Get out. Okay. Bye.
Bye.
If you guys like what you see, subscribe right here.